Hashem, we're up to Daf Mem Zion today, and we're going to start a little bit about 25 lines from the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Beis, and basically the conversation of what we're discussing is the whole point of Egla Rufa, and I want to stress this, is that you could take away somebody's self-esteem by not showing him the proper respect if he's a guest in your house or a guest in your community. And the Gemara is stressing the importance of escorting somebody. When he comes to your house, escort him to the door. If he comes to your city, you escort him out of the city. And the reason of the whole Egla Rufa is that the person who got killed, the victim, because he didn't have the courage to fight back, or he was left without food, and he tried to rob somebody of food, and because of that, he got killed. And we're blaming the whole city for not showing the respect for this individual who came to visit. So we left off yesterday. I think I've left it off over here, but I'm just going to say that the Gemara said that there was this person, this was this guy that showed the Jewish people with his head motions, or we'll see how he showed them, the head motions, how to enter into a certain city that the Jews wanted to capture. And the Gemara said, and the Tanakh tells us that because he was so, he showed directions to the Jews, so therefore they did him a favor. They saved his life and they saved his family's life. And then they moved him out of the war, and he ended up building this place called Luz. And this Luz was such a unique place that it was like Switzerland. First of all, when there was a war, Sennacherib, Nebuchadnezzar came, and it never got destroyed. And then the Gemara says a fascinating place. If you go live in this place, Luz, you never die. That's it. The Malach HaMavis has no way to get into that city, and if the people want to die, they just leave the city. So the Gemara just finishes off that topic. How did this guy show the Jewish people what the directions are? He did it only with his mouth. He showed him with his finger. Tanya Kavos Rabbi Yochanan, the Brisa says exactly what Rabbi Yochanan says. Shvil Sheknani Zeh, this Phoenician, Hera Be'etzboy, he made a motion with his finger, the directions. Garam Hatzal Loy Uzaroy Atsoif Koladaris. He saved his family and his children for many generations, all the generations, till the end of time. So we see, and he was just showing directions, and the Tanakh tells us what a reward he got. So if you escort somebody and show them directions how to go, and don't just leave them out there hanging, you'll certainly get a tremendous, tremendous reward. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Hamhalach b'derech. Let's say if you're going on the road, ve'ein lo levaya, and nobody's escorting you, all alone on the road. So he tells you, Yasib b'Torah, you start learning Torah, Shenema, because the pasuk says, Klebiyas chen heim l'rashecha v'nokal l'gargar secha. Torah brings you a certain attraction, chen. And when you're on the road, you're going to have to ask directions. By busying yourself learning Torah, you'll have such an attraction that when you're going to ask directions from people, they'll be happy to help you. And that's when you need it most. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, because Avram Avinu was escorted by Paroi 4 steps. That was that we know. He doesn't say that in the Chumash, but the tradition of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was 4 steps. Pari commanded to escort Abraham and Sarah out of their country. They were the host, and we were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. In other words, the Jews could have been enslaved by any country. That was the Bris Bein Hamsarim. But God made it to happen in Mitzrayim because Paroi escorted Avraham Avinu, and for 4 steps. So because of that, Avram's children, us, were in Mitzrayim for 400 years. And I'm sure the economy did pretty well during those 400 years. So that was the schus of escorting Avram Avinu. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. If you escort somebody in the city, he never becomes damaged. In other words, that you don't have to walk him all the way to the end of the city, but if you walk him a little bit outside your house, that's like a segula that nothing bad will happen to him. Ravina Alve, the Gemara brings a story. Ravina Alve Rava Bar Yitzchak Dalar Amas Be'ir. Ravina escorted Rava Bar Yitzchak 4 amas in the city, and Mata Lidei Hezeka Visnitzel, and somehow he almost got damaged. Maybe somebody held him up, and he became saved. Somehow the police showed up, and he wasn't robbed. It was only because Ravina escorted him just 4 amas. So if you can't escort somebody, miles, just escort him a little bit. Tana Rabbanan, a Rav Talmud. The Rav is escorting the Talmud ad ibur sha'ir. He really should take him to the edge of the city. Chave lechava, one Talmud Chacham to another Talmud Chacham, should escort them at Chum Shabbos to 2,000 amas outside the city. Talmud Rav, but a student who has to escort his Rebbe, Ein Shir, there's no amount. He could escort him even to the next town. The Kama, but what is the minimum? Rav Sheshes ad Parsi should walk at least a parsa, a mile, let's say. If it's not your most designated rabbi, Ava Rabbi Muvak, but if it's your only designated rabbi, your main rabbi, Shaloisha Parsois, you have to walk him outside the city 3 parsois. The Gemara just tells a story about one rabbi escorting his Rabbi Muvik. Rav Kahana Alve Rav Shimi Bar Ashi. Rav Kahana escorted Rav Shimi Bar Ashi Mipum Nahara. He walked in from the city of Tur Nahara ad Beit Sinisa de Bavel. Told there was a place in Bavel that was known as the palm tree forest. So Kimate Hassam, when he got over there, Amaloe, he said to Rav Kahana said to Rav Shimi, people are saying that these palm trees are from the time of Adam Rishon. It's like the redwood tree. I don't know how, but it's like these. It's like these trees that are from. It's like these trees from the time of Adam Rishon. So he couldn't understand. These trees did not look like it was from the time of Adam Rishon. Amalei, so Rav Shimi Barashi said, you reminded me of something Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said. And I'll explain you why people are saying this is from Adam Rishon's time. It doesn't mean that it's from Adam Rishon's time. It means that Adam Rishon said that there should be a palm tree forest over here. Even though palm tree forest could be anywhere, but it's all designated. The way the earth is formed and the way people live over here and they don't live over there, it's only because Adam Rishon made it so. Because my diksiv, what does it say in the pasuk? Be'eretz, there's places on planet Earth like Ava Ba'ish. No man ever passed there. Okay, no Pesach program was there. V'lo yashiv Adam Sham, and nobody settled there. So the pasuk asks. This pasuk seems redundant. Since no human ever went there, right? Hechin yashiv. So of course, who's going to settle there? If no humans ever came there, so then it's not going to be settled. Ella, what it means is Eretz shegaz aleim Adam Yerishon Yishav Nisyashva. Eretz shaloi gaz aleim Adam Rishon loy Nisyashva. A place on planet Earth that Adam Rishon did not say people should live here was never settled there. So Be'eretz, that's what we learn. Be'eretz loy avai ba'ish. If you find a place on planet Earth that no man goes there, it's because lo yashiv Adam Sham. Adam Rishon, this Adam Rishon said nobody should settle there. So basically what he said is, people are saying that these palm trees are from Adam Rishon's time. Of course, they may not be exactly from Adam Rishon. They may not be 6,000 years old or near that. But what they mean is that the fact that there's a palm tree forest over here is because Adam Rishon designated this to be a palm tree forest. So, but anyway, they were talking and learning. And you see that when you escort your rabbi, you could learn something. Rav Mordechai Alvei Rav Ashi Magronya. Rav Mordechai escorted Rav Ashi from Magronya, Ba'ad Bei Kifi, from Magronya till Bei Kifi, Ba'amilad Bei Dura till Bei Dura. So you have to look on a map how long he escorted his rabbi. I'm sure Rav Mordechai had better things to do, but he felt it was important to escort his rabbi to as far as he could do. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rav Meir. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rav Meir, Paul Shein Malava Umislava. Rav Meir says, whoever doesn't escort a person, even though umislava, the person's being escorted by other people, as if he killed him. Now the Gemara is gonna go into a story in Tanakh, and basically I'll tell it to you outside. There's a story in Tanakh where the city of Yericho had a problem with the water supply. It was too bitter and it was undrinkable. And so they called in Elisha the prophet. Elisha the prophet came in and turned the water sweet and sweetened the waters. As he left the city, Elisha went home. The people, young kids, let's say called teenagers or young men, came over to him and started mocking Elisha and calling him the baldy. Why were they angry at Elisha? He just saved their city because these young kids were making a good living by bringing in water from elsewhere. And they had a good business going, selling water. And Elisha came into the city and cleaned up the water supply. So they were so angry at him, they started mocking him. And Elisha turned around and cursed them. And what happened is, and you may have heard this story, so all of a sudden, a forest appeared, and two bears came out of the forest and tore apart these 42 kids. Now, had the people of the Yericho escorted Elisha out of the city, they would have protected him from being mocked by these kids, and these kids' lives would have been saved. That's what the story is. If the people of Yericho would have escorted Elisha, like the children would not have been taken apart, torn apart by bears. They started degrading Elisha as he left the city of Yericho, and I guess Elisha was all alone by himself. Go up, you baldy, go up, you baldy. Maybe Elisha was bald. They basically were telling him, Ale, get out of here. You bolded this place. In other words, you took away our living. We were the kids, we were the young guys who had a good water business going, and you now made the water supply in Yericho edible. So now, who are these kids? Mine Orim Ketana. The pasuk describes them as teenagers, and Ketana means under bar mitzvah. Amar Rablaza says no. Shemuna Orim min hamitzvahs. It means it's a description of the type of people they were. They were people empty of mitzvahs. Uketanim shemiktani amona. They didn't have belief. In other words, it's very interesting when you think somebody's taking away your parnasa. So you're and you think that person's ruining my parnasa. If you're blaming that person, you're a person of small faith. Faith means that nobody can take away what's designated to be yours. If it's yours, if it's meant to me, it's going to happen to you. So these people are considered ketanim, of people who have small faith and empty for mitzvahs. If a person does a lot of mitzvahs, you build up your faith muscles. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, na'arim hayu uvizmuz azmin ketanim. They were teenagers, but young people, but they disgraced themselves like young people, like a cotton, like a small lad. Maskav lo Rav Yosef. The Dilma Shema Kaiman. Rav Yosef just asked the question. Maybe the word Na'arim means they came from the city of Na'arim, and Ketanim means they were under Bar Mitzvah. So that me like Siv, we find that there was a city called Na'arim. Varam Yatsu Gedudim Yishbu Meretz Yisrael Nara Ketana. The Kashlon Nara Ketana. Vamrapdas Ketana the Minorim. Rapadas touched up a pasuk in Malachim Beis that Na'ara Ketana means the Ketana who came from the city of Nara. So maybe it means over here also Ketanim who came from the city of Na'arim. So the Gemara says, over there it doesn't say what city they came from. So therefore Na'ara was the city. Here, it's obvious they came from Yericho. So we know what the place where they came from, Yericho. So what does it mean? Na'arim Ketana means it's just a description of the type of people who started mocking Elisha. So the pasuk describes, what did Elisha respond to these people? Elisha turned around and wanted to see who's mocking him, and he saw them. And he cursed them in the name of God. In other words, what did he see? Why does it say he saw? Of course, when you turn around, you see. Amarav Ra Mamish. He just stared them down. By when a chacham just he stares you down, he could chas v'shalom bring on a person death or poverty. The Ra means that he stared them down. Just the eye alone of Elisha was enough to cause damage. He wanted to know who are these kids, and he observed that they were born because their mother had relations on Yom Kippur. You know, you're not allowed to have relations on Yom Kippur. So their mothers of all these 42 kids had relations on Yom Kippur, and they were born in sin. Rabbi Yitzchak Napachama Belurius Ra Lehem Kagoyim. he saw plated locks on them and their back of their heads that they made them look like goyim. So they looked like goyim. They had the modern look. They didn't even have the moist of any mitzvah in them. So therefore, I guess he was assessing to himself, should I kill them with a good curse? And he saw that these people are people who have tumah in them. They were born in sin, and they're people who are more or less acting like goyim. So the Gemara asks the question, okay, he looked at them, but maybe their children will be, why did Elisha curse them? He should have looked at their offspring of these kids, and maybe they'll have an offspring that's a tzaddik. Elisha stared them down, and he looked into their future crystal ball in all these kids, and he found out that none of them will have children who are worthy for redemption. So therefore he cursed them. As soon as he cursed them, the Tanakh tells us that and the two bears got out of the forest and tore apart these 42 kids. We go to Mem Zayin Amar Aleph. Rav Shmuel Chadam a nes. One said it was one nes, that it was one miracle. Chadam a nes that were actually two miracles. Man the Omanes, one that says there was a miracle. Of course, Yar Hava. There was a forest there from before, but Duben Loy Hava. But there was no bears over there, and therefore the fact that all of a sudden bears showed up, so therefore that was a nace that only came because of the curse that Elisha cursed them. Man the Omanes b'seich nace. It was the double nace. Lo Yar Hava v'Lo Duben Hava. There was no forest there and no bear over there. So therefore, Elisha created a miracle that all of a sudden a forest appeared and two bears came out. Now, why did he have to make why couldn't he just make a bears without a forest? Why did Elisha make bears with a forest? All he had to do is one miracle, just make bears come. And he didn't need the forest. Answers the Gemara, to be easy, because bears will not attack a human unless it has a place to run and hide. And therefore, he had to create the forest along with the bear so that the bear will have the courage to attack these kids. Now, so the Tanakh described that killed 42 kids, 42 young people. Why the number 42? Where else in the Chumash do you find the number 42? Amar Rab Chanina said, B'shvil arboim mishnayim kabona shehikra balak melech moyev, because there were 42 carbonis that Balak brought, trying to get Bilam to curse the Jewish people during that period of Parshas Balak. He brought 42 carbonis, so therefore it worked. His curse worked. That 42 kids were killed because of Balak's sacrifices. So the Gemara says, Eini, that's not true. You're telling me something bad came about because of Balak's sacrifices. Rav Yehuda says Rav, just the opposite. Something good came out of Balak's sacrifices. Because a person should just learn Torah mitzvahs even though he doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel God while he's learning it. But by learning Shloi L'Shma without any reason, you'll eventually feel God. You see, it's a Daf Yomi coincidence. Because Balak, the king of Moab, brought about these 42 sacrifices, even though his intention was that it should bring about the downfall of the Jewish people, but at the end of the day, it was a sacrifice to God. Rus came. He is the grandfather of Rus, who is the grandfather of David and Shlomo, who's the grandmother of David and Shlomo. Shlomo brought 1,000 sacrifices. How do you know Rus is the granddaughter of Balak? Rabbi Yosef Bar Chaini said, Rus bitishel Eglon benoishel Balak. Rus is the granddaughter of Balak, and her father's name was Eglon. So what do you see from there? That the fact that Balak brought 42 sacrifices was a good thing. Something good came out of it. So how could you say that the 42 kids were killed because of Balak's sacrifices? We see something good came out of Balak's sacrifices. And says the Gemara, Ta'avosoi miya leklol. His intention was to curse, and therefore his intention, his inside was to bring about these sacrifices so that it should bring about a curse from Bilam against the Jewish people. So that there was an element of bad in it, and therefore that bad came about many decades, many years later, hundreds of years later, when these 42 kids were killed on the account of Elisha's curse. Now the pasuk says, when Elisha, now the Gemara goes back to the original story. Why did they call Elisha, the doctor Elisha, to fix the water system there? Because they told him like this: "Vayomer ansher ir el Elisha, he didn't know Moshe v'ir time." They told Elisha, "We have a great city, Yericho, over here, Kasha Doini Raya. We love it, but the water, everybody who drinks this water dies." So that's a very strange statement. How can you say the city is good when people can't drink the water? That's the Gemara's question. Because the water is terrible, and this land is killing off its inhabitants. What's so good about it? Why are they saying this is a great place to live? Very important concept, that the grace of a place is on its inhabitants. People, if they're planted in a certain area, people generally like where they are, and they don't think it's better than somewhere else, despite the migrants. But people are happy, and God puts as a certain chen that person should want to live in the place that he is born and raised. Rabbi Yochanan said, you see that in life a lot. There are certain people, you can't understand it. I can't understand why somebody would want to live in Iceland, or somebody wants to live in the Arcticas. Yet people, for no money in the world, you'll never be able to bring them to Florida. It doesn't work like the way. And the Rabbi Yochanan said, if you observe life, you'll see that a lot. Shloisha Chinesein, there are three types of people who that have grace, and therefore they never want to leave. Sometimes the grace of its place are its inhabitants, even though it's not a nice place to live, they love living there. Pain Isha Albala. Sometimes a woman who's not so pretty, and yet her husband thinks she's the most beautiful woman in the world. There's a Chain Isha Albala, that the grace of a woman onto her husband. And Chain Mikach al Mikra. And people who buy certain things, they certainly have a grace to it. God puts it a grace that they should desire what they purchased. And you can say, who would buy such a painting? Yet you can't explain it. And these are only what God puts into the person's psyche to appreciate and enjoy what he has. Tana Rabban, rabbis taught, Elisha got sick 3 times. Echad, he got sick because Shagira Dubim Tinoikis. He got sick because he caused these children to be killed by the bears, so he felt bad about it. The Echad, and now we go into another fascinating discussion. Elisha did something wrong. He had an assistant called Gehazi, and he pushed him away, and he didn't give him an opportunity to do tshuva. Gehazi did something wrong, and Elisha pushed him away, and never allowed Gehazi to do tshuva. So because of that, Elisha got sick. And the final sickness that Elisha got in his life is the sicknesses that caused his death. Shnema, Elisha chola es cholia ash yomisboy. He got sick of the sickness that killed him. So chola and cholia and the sickness that killed him is 3 times of the sickness that he got killed, that he got sick, and it's only because of these 3 averos that Elisha did. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. This is one of those fascinating Gemaras in Shas. It discusses. We'll discuss it in a second, but first, the Gemara discusses la'olam tehei small doicha the yamin mekareves. If you want to give somebody musar, you give him with your left hand. Push him away with your left hand, but when he wants to come back, bring him back with your right hand. And make it easy for him. But don't be like Elisha. Don't be like Elisha. That pushed away his assistant Gehazi with his 2 hands and never allowed Gehazi to do tshuva. And now the Gemara says, which you probably never were aware of this. Like Yeshua ben Prachia. Yeshua ben Prachia was an early Tana in the second base of Migdash. He had a student called Jesus, and he pushed him away and didn't allow him to do tshuva. And because of that, he went out and started another religion. Shedachvu liyeshe hanoitzri. Yeshe is Jesus. Hanoitzri, who came from Nazareth. B'shtei yadav, Yeshua ben Prachia pushed him away. And because of that, he didn't come back. We're going to say the story about Yeshu in a moment. But first, the Gemara discusses the story about Elisha. Elisha Mahi, the Ksiv. The pasuk says like this: Elisha went ahead and cured Naaman, a king, Naaman, a king of leprosy. And after curing him of leprosy, the Chumash says that Elisha did not want to take payment. Well, Elisha walked away, not taking payment, but his assistant turned back and said, you know what, if you want to give the rabbi a donation, I'll take it for him. And Gehazi took, Naaman said, Hoyo, swear, kach kikarim, take these talents of silver. So Gehazi, his assistant, his confidant, took the payment on behalf of what Elisha just did. So Elisha got angry at him. But Ksiv, Yomi Elav, Elisha got angry and said to Gehazi, you don't think I was there when I saw Naaman turn around from his chariot, go towards you to give you stuff to pay you? That you took the reward from Naaman because I healed him from his sickness. And you took his clothing and you took oil from him and olives and sheep and cattle and slaves and maids. So the Gemara just doesn't understand why Elisha is accusing Gehazi for taking all this as reward. Mishakal kulahai, did Gehazi take so much? The pasuk describes before that all he took from Naaman was silver and clothing. He didn't take anything more than that. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Elisha was thinking about the number 8 because he was learning a perek in Masechta Shabbos called Shmoyne Shratzim. And since he was thinking about the number 8, so he had this figure of 8 in his mind. So he said, Begadim, Zaysim, Kram, and Sainu Baka, Vadim Shwachis. He said, oh, you Gehazi, you must have taken 8 items from Naaman. I didn't want you to take anything from this guy. Amalei, so Elisha told Gehazi, Rasha, you're an evil person. And it's the time that you're supposed to take you're going to get rewarded in this world, and you're not going to be able to come to Olam Haba. And all your learning that you did, you're going to get rewarded in this world, and like a Russia, and when you come to the next world, you're not going to have anything. And he cursed him. Elisha cursed Gehazi. You should get sick like Naaman got sick with leprosy for the rest of your life, you and your kids. And the pasuk says exactly what happened. There were 4 main people who had leprosy. Gehazi and his 3 boys had this leprosy because of the curse of Elisha. The Yelech, Elisha Damascus. But then the pasuk says that one time Elisha went to Damascus. For what reason? That doesn't really describe there exactly why he went to Damascus. He wanted to get Gehazi to do tshuva and come take him back as an assistant. But Gehazi did not want to come back anymore. He was so pushed away from Elisha, he didn't have the courage to come back and do tshuva. Amalai, Elisha told Gehazi, Chazar b'cha, come back. Amalai, so Gehazi said, Kach mukubal mimcha, I have a tradition from you. Call me shechate. If you do an avera, v'hechdias rabim, and you cause other people to do an avera, ein maspikim biyadei lasus tshuva. You can never do tshuva. And so therefore I did an avera, and not only that, I caused other people to do an avera. My oven, what bad thing did this Gehazi do? What did he cause other people to do an avera? Others say, he took there was a Yeravam, made an avodah zarah in the shape of a calf, let's say call it a golden calf, a silver calf, and he put it in a room, and the room had magnets on the walls. So the calf was suspended in the air, and people started to believe, without knowing science, they started to believe that the calf is God. It's suspended in the air with nothing holding it up. They didn't realize that there was a power of magnets in the world that's causing it to be suspended. So he caused other people to start believing into the avodah zarah of Yeravam ben Nebat. Others say, Shem Chokot lo yapuba. He wrote God's name into the mouth of this calf, and this calf was talking. Anoichi v'leicha was saying the Aseres Adibros. Others say, Rabbanan Dochem Ekamei. He didn't allow, when he was the assistant to Elisha, he did not allow people to come into the shear that Elisha was giving. The Ksiv, after Gehazi was fired, the pasuk says, "Vayomer b'nei anavim el Elisha, hinei ne'mokam ashnachnu yoshim sham lefnecha tzar me'enu." There's not much room in your class when we're sitting in front of you. So that was after Gehazi was fired. So then, because Gehazi was fired, everybody was allowed to enter into the yeshiva and into the classroom where Elisha was giving shir. While Gehazi was in charge, there was not such a big crowd coming in because he was the doorman, and he didn't allow. And he was the gatekeeper. He didn't allow anybody. Not everybody got access to Elisha. Now the Gemara is to describe how did Jesus come around? What's the story about him? So the Gemara says Yeshua ben Prachia Mahi. What's the story? So the story is like this. He have a kotel Yanai Malka Rabbanim. It takes you a little back. Yanai, there was a king Yanai, a Jewish king, who hated the Orthodox Jews and he hated the rabbis and he killed out all the leading Orthodox rabbis. But he had a wife called Shlomtzion. I'm sure you're familiar with that street called Shlomtzion. And anyway, his wife was had a brother called Shimon ben Shattach, and she saved this last rabbi, Shimon ben Shattach, at Meninu Achte. His sister hid him. So Yanai could not find where Shimon ben Shattach was. Rabbi Shimon ben Prachia, he was lucky enough not to be killed by Yanai, but Azal Arak Lakasander in Mitzrayim. He escaped to this place called Alexandria of Mitzrayim. He have a shlama shalach lev Shimon Shattach. When Yanai Melech repented and wanted to bring back Orthodox rabbis, so Shimon ben Shattach came out of his hiding place and wanted Yeshua ben Prachia, who went to Alexandria of Egypt, to come and come back to Jerusalem. He said, "Midi Yerushalayim ira kodesh loch Alexandria shel Mitzrayim." I'm from Jerusalem calling to you, and you're in Alexandria of Mitzrayim. Achoisi, my sister. Alexandria is like the sister to Yerushalayim. It's like a sister city. Bali Shari B'Seich, my husband is inside Alexandria, and I'm sitting desolate. In other words, basically, you're my husband, Yeshua ben Prachia, come back to Jerusalem. So when Yeshua ben Prachia got the message, he understood that there's peace in Jerusalem, and he decided to make his way from Alexandria back to Egypt. Now comes the story of Yeshu. As he's coming back, he went to this hotel, the innkeeper gave him considerable respect. And he made him very special honor in honor of Yeshua ben Prachia. So this lady innkeeper, let's call it, where Yeshua ben Prachia is on his way back to Jerusalem, is making a whole party in honor of Yeshua ben Prachia. Yosef v'kamishtabach. So Yeshua ben Prachia started to say something nice about this innkeeper. Kama noach san yezeh. How beautiful, how nice is this innkeeper? Amalei Yeshua Noitzri. So Yeshua Noitzri, who is the student of Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, said, Rebbe, a neho trutais. Her eyes are too big. In other words, Yeshua Noitzri thought that Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia is remarking how beautiful she is. So Yeshua Noitzri says, yes, she's a beautiful lady, but her eyes are a little off-center. So Amalei, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia says, what do you think? You think I'm talking about her beauty or outside beauty? I'm talking about her inside beauty. Rasha, you're busy with the beauty of a woman. Apek arba mea shapuri v'shamti. He blew 400 shofars and put Yeshua Noitzri in cherem. So Yeshua Noitzri didn't want to give up. He still wanted to be a Jewish person. So Kol Yarmei, every day, Asa the Kame, he came before Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, V'loi Kivlei. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia didn't want to have anything to do with it. Yom Echad Avakari Kriyashma. One day he was reading the Kriyashma. Asa the Kame. And so he wanted to ask Yeshua ben Prachia, take me back. I want to be your student again. Have a bedaite lekabule. Yeshua ben Prachia wanted to take Yeshua Noitzri back. But he motioned, wait a minute, let me finish my reading my Kriyashma, and then we can have a conversation. But he misunderstood it. He thought that Yeshua Noitzri thought that Yeshua ben Prachia is pushing him away again. Azel Zagaf Levensa Placha. He set up a whole structure, and he started bowing to them. And therefore, he started the new religion. He never came back again. He misunderstood the message that Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia said, and he said, you know what, he's never going to accept me back. I'm starting a new religion. Amalei, finally, when Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia went to him, he said, Chazoi b'cha, please come back. Amalei, kach meklamim cha, I have a tradition for you. If you sin and you cause others to sin, they don't allow him to do tshuva. and all this happened because Yeshua Prachia may have been too extreme on Yeshe HaNoitzri. And again, most of his people that he started this religion, a Christian religion, was Jewish. The Alma Mar said, Yeshe HaNoitzri, Kishef, he was a sorcerer, the Hasis, the Hidiach, the Hechtis Yisrael. He basically he caused other people to do sins. He convinced other people and pushed other people to doing sins. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Reb Shimon ben Elazar commented on life. Okay, he commented on life. Yetzer, you can't be a monk. In other words, you can be extreme, but not too extreme. So when it comes to the sexuality, Yetzer Hara, you have to do it in moderation. You push it away with your left hand, but don't push it away with two hands because then you'll never procreate. Tinnik, if you have a child that's giving you problems, so don't smack him up and patch him up and push him away with two hands. Rashi says a funny thing, that if you push away a child too much, he's going to run away from you. Ya'abed es atzmin, commit suicide. So he'll lose himself. You can't push these people away. You have to be like a bar of soap. You got to hold it gently. If you squeeze too hard, it'll pop out of your hands. The Isha and the woman. In other words, a wife, with your wife, you have to be in moderation. Your left hand should push away, be a little bit cool, but your right hand should bring them closer. Look at Afi, because if you're too extreme with your wife, Rashi says that she may go sin with other men. Look at the Mishnah. Okay, we're going to do another 3-4 minutes, and then we'll stop. We'll continue tomorrow, Bez Hashem, but I just want to finish at least the Mishnah. Nimtza ha'horig actually nerfa ha'egla teitza v'sira be'eda. If you found the the killer before they brought the egla rufa, then they don't bring in the egla rufa. They let the egla go into the let it go. Mishnah erfa egla, but if they hacked off the egla rufa's head, they cover them, you bury it in its place. Since even it was a real egla rufa, you only discovered the killer after you hacked off the head of the egla rufa. So the place becomes usher. Nerfa egla, and that's the point. If you hacked off the egla rufa's head, then you found the killer. So of course, you kill the killer. You don't let him get away with it. Now the Mishnah says, one aid says, I know who the killer is. You did not see the killer. So it's 1 against 1. If it's 2 women, one said, I know the killer, and one says, don't know the killer. You don't know the killer. Hoya Arfin, they would bring the Egla Rufa because it remains a doubt. We don't know if there is a killer. We don't know who the killer is. But Eid Echad Omer Isi, one witness says, I saw the killer. Ushnaim Omer Loi Reisi, and 2 of them, so it's 2 against 1, say, you don't know who the killer is. Hoya Arfin, they would bring the Egla Rufa. But Shnayim Omer Reino, but if 2 said, we saw the killer. 2 people know who the killer is. The Echad Omer Loi Reisi, and one says, you don't know the killer. Loi Hoya Arfin, they would not bring the Egla Rufa. Then the Mishnah finishes off. Mishrabu Haraitz Chonim, Batla Egla Rufa. When there was proliferated so many killers, they didn't bring the Egla Rufa because more or less they knew who the killers were. There was the special Jewish mafia that any dead body that you found in a location just outside the city, you know exactly who did it. Mishabah Eliezer ben Dinai, Uschina ben Prisha. These were 2 known murderers, like Lansky's. Hoya Nikra, this guy was Uschina ben Prisha, that was his name. Elazar ben Dinai. They call him the son of the killer. So once there was so many of these Jewish mafia, they stopped bringing Egla Rufa because Egla Rufa is only brought if you don't know who the killer is. But here they more or less knew. Mishrab Amanath, they found people who were doing adultery. Huska Mayim Amarim, they stopped allowing people to drink sota waters. Rabbi Yochanan in his time, at the end of the second temple, he said, no more Soita waters. Shnema, loy efkoid, the Soita waters are not going to work. Because your children and everybody's doing znus over here. So if everybody's doing znus, even the husbands are doing znus, the Soita waters are not going to work for his wife. Then the Gemara Mishnah finishes off. Yosef ben Yezer Yishrei, Yosef ben Yehuda Yishrushalayim, Batla Eshkolish. Yosef ben Yezer and Yosef ben Yehuda were people who knew everything. And because of them, you could ask them any question. There was no machlekes. But once they died, then you didn't have people who were like clusters that know everything. Yochanan Kohen Gadol heavier Haidoyas Maisa. Yochanan ben Gadol said, don't say the Vidui Maisras, because in the time of the Second Temple, they were not giving Maisa Rishon to the Levi. Remember that, because the Levi did not join Ezra in coming up and building the Second Temple. So he told them that you don't have to give Maisa Rishon to the Levi anymore. You just burn it. And therefore, they didn't say the Vidui Maisa. We'll see what that was. He also stopped people from saying awaken and the strikers. We'll see what that means in the Gemara. We go to Amud Beis. Until his time, people who were blacksmith used to work on Chalamoid. But then he stopped that also because even though you're allowed to work on Chalamoid if you need the money, but it made too much noise in Jerusalem, and people will say, oh, you can do anything on Chalamoid. And then finally, in his days, they didn't ask anything on Demai. All Amaratzim were giving Meisers. Okay, we're going to stop at the Gemara over here on Memvav Amud Beis. Zayin Amud Beis. Okay. Tomorrow.